Hello, Dino here, and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 39. Another 7 curious, interesting things I saw last week. So, as ever, let's crack on. First one is anti-gravity sand, and yes, that is sand that is going uphill. Now, it's not actually sand, it's actually tiny plastic pellets or spheres, and half of the pellets have been coated with iron oxide. Now, it's magnetic, so therefore, if you put these spheres in a magnetic field that is rotating, they will then clump together and they can then create traction and then move over each other. So that's exactly what you're seeing here. There's a good diagram of it there. So exactly why would you want to do this? I have no idea, but it's really cool. Maybe you're making robots in the future and you want to make robots out of this nanoparticle stuff. This is for you. Also, it's really cool that they're called Janus beads. Now, January, if you didn't know, is named after Janus because it goes forwards and backwards. It looks both ways, hence why they're called Janus beads. So well done, whoever named those. I do appreciate that. This is Neuralink, or you probably know about Neuralink. It's an Elon Musk company. Bought it several years ago. They've been doing a lot of research into brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs. You might have seen a bunch of it. However, they've now got the okay to do some trials, and they are now recruiting for those trials. They are testing two things, the R1 robot on the left-hand side, and also the N1 neural implant, which is on the right-hand side. So that robot essentially clamps your head and will drill through your skull and implant those little wires from that neural implant on into your brain, in this case your motor cortex, and it will then kind of screw everything in and make good. So you probably won't be able to see it once it's there, especially if you wear a hat. Now the point of this one is that it will give people who are quadriplegic a way to communicate with computers and therefore control things using their motor cortex. Control a mouse, for instance, and therefore they can do all sorts of things with that. There are some T's and C's, let's call them. You do need to be quadriplegic. You do need to be over 22, and also you need somebody to care for you. You need probably 6 years to do this, and also you probably will get paid for it as well. Now, that's all cool and everything. Obviously, that's all going in the right direction. There is also quite a lot of, or there are a lot of reports at the moment about what happened to the monkeys that we used to do the previous research for this, and it's pretty gruesome reading what actually happened to them. So not without its risks and also its controversy, but there you go. If that's for you, handy dandy QR code, sign up now. This is a really curious thing. So this is an app for those of you in the US, shall we say, to stop you probably getting shot by police during a traffic stop. Now, what a bizarre thing to even think about, but yet here we are. So what it does is if you are stopped by the police, then you fire up your app. It does a quick check in the GPS just to check which policeman is behind you, and therefore you can have a chat with them, and then you can explain what's going on, and you can take that initial tension away from the stop. That's the whole point of this sort of thing, essentially to stop you getting shot. Now, obviously, this is a technology that is used to patch up a much wider societal issue, but there you go. If you do want to sign up to this one, if you are in the States, for instance, and you do get a ticket whilst you're using this, actually the company will pay a percentage of your ticket. So there's your incentive. Who'd have thought? This is a really interesting video. This is actually from Hash over on Recessism, which is Latin for backwards. It's all about backwards compatibility and hacking bits of kit, basically. Now, this is actually Sergey Bratov, so it's a couple of years old, 2016, I think, but it's a really interesting concept of what's called protocol dialects. So each piece of hardware will actually not respond to certain things, and therefore you can almost kind of filter them out based on how they respond. So if you imagine sending a full packet of information with everything you could possibly say to a piece of hardware, and it just ignores a bunch of it, but sends back some replies to some of it, that sort of almost that echo signature is how you can identify different bits of hardware. What you're seeing on screen right now are different bits of hardware that have just replied because they ignore certain parts but respond to others. Therefore, you can almost send out a ping to somebody and see how their hardware reacts to it, and therefore identify the hardware they've got. And that can start identifying that signature. You can possibly identify people and or kit that they're using, and therefore you can probably then deploy a vulnerability because of that. So that's really, really interesting. If you're into hardware, then it is actually more interesting than I'm making it sound, obviously. Do have a go with Hash's video, and there's also some links to the original research in there as well. So it's really interesting. Got to talk about Flash. Obviously, this died a death quite rightly many years ago. It became the Voldemort of the internet. You should now not mutter its name. However, I just have done. So this is Flashpoint, and they have archived 170,000 games and animations since 2017. So if your favorite games are still out there, maybe it's Dancing Badgers or something like that, then you might be able to find it. This was the first ever game I did in 2000, I think it was, for for the Digimon website. And there's lots of other stuff on there. I've just found a whole load of my projects, probably 50 or 60 games that I'd even forgotten about. They're all on there. So if that's you, what you can do is you can go and search for it. You can then go and play it directly in your browser. It works, I'm not sure on mobile phones. I haven't had any success, but if you've got a desktop browser, then here you go. Another game I was involved in, Tickling a Monkey for Mr. Men. There you go. So the wider point about this, by the way, is that there's a lot of culture, there's a lot of creativity and a lot of craft that is lost every time there is a new format of the internet. So Director, for instance, before it, and therefore Flash, and then we might lose something else as well. So there's a lot of Unity games that are now not accessible on the internet. So there you go. That might be useful for you. This is the Amazon Echo Gen 3 glasses. So if you didn't know, there's been 2 gens before this. This is now lighter and lasts longer, and also comes with some funky fashion options. Thank you to Carrera for those. Now, what is it? It's essentially a pair of smart glasses, but it is really just Alexa on your face. There are no cameras in it, but it allows you to interact with Kit using speech. So you can answer your telephone calls. There's some really good speakers in them, so you can hear nicely. But also, if you want to turn your speakers on or off, then you can do, and that sort of thing. So if that's for you, the prices start at $269.99, available, broadly speaking, soon and or now. And finally, it's a really interesting piece of research. We've been seeing a lot of research about tweaking or problems with generative AI and also large language models, and things that we're just starting to discover aren't quite as we expected. So this is actually a piece of research, comes out of Google DeepMind, and what they found is if you encourage AIs, you encourage sort of the large language model with something like take a deep breath and work on this step by step, and then give it a maths problem to do, it will come out with better results. Now, they're trying to figure out why this is, but what they think is happening here is because there's a large language model behind this. When you say take a deep breath and work on this step by step, those sorts of utterances are found on forums where people are helping each other out on maths problems. So what it might be doing is directing the large language model to then start using a lot of new or more relevant kind of prompts from that area of its research. So we're not quite sure how many of these exist, but they have now got an AI that can start to then try and find these for you. So actually speaking nicely to your AI might be the way to get it to work better. There you go, who'd have thought? Now, hopefully that was interesting, hopefully it was useful. If it was, then please do give it a like, please do give it a share, it really does help. And other than that, I will see you next week.